the current AI hype and the building long-term sustainable product value. How do you say no to that kind of noise?
A plugin should focus on one thing. So meeting one need, solving one problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean only one feature, right? It means, the product solves a specific problem.
From the architectural perspective, like when you look under the hood of those 1,000 plus extension, what is the most common red flag?
Of course, we can talk a lot about actual code size as well. That's really important. But ultimately, we've heard a lot about WordPress plugins, that too many plugins is bloating your system, it's slowing down your WordPress. These are somewhat misnomers, right?
As a senior director at Automattic, and many developers in our audience reach a point where their plugins grow, and suddenly they have to manage team instead of writing code.
Right. So as a business owner, are we building the right product? As a product person, are we building the right for our customer? Right. These are often things an engineer who's a pure engineer, so to speak, wouldn't be focused on.
And developer see the technical debt that needs fixing, while business partner just want a new feature that drives sales. And the question can be raised like that: how can engineering leaders better speak business value to their teams?
The finances and the cost of having it, but they can also understand the impact of not having it. Right. So if you say we have technical debt,
Yeah.
and it's gone unaddressed, right? Your first instinct might be something like, well, we're a startup, so we have a million things to do, and we only can get to maybe 2 or 3. Like, we have runway for the next 3 months. What do we do?
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to GoIWP. And today's guest has been at the absolute center of WooCommerce story. For over 2 decades, like he's working like 21 years in this kind of e-commerce ecosystem. He was employee number 8 at WooThemes, scaled through the Automattic acquisition as WooCommerce first chief product and technological officer, and today work as a fractional CTO and coach. Am I researching right about you?
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Please welcome to the show, Matt Cohen, and thank you for joining us. And let's start with the current roles and responsibility on the fractional CTO and coach, and we will follow other question after that.
Hi, yeah, that sounds great. So today, what I spend a lot of my time doing is stepping into businesses, mostly in the scale up and startup phase, and working through some of those early teething issues that people have. So whether it's scaling up an engineering team, or trying to, help engineering, senior engineers graduate to that next stage of being engineering leaders or engineering managers and trying to manage other people. It could be that, to anything from there to what does this business actually need in order to go from 0 to 1, or from 1 to 100. So it might be a development thing, like they might need to improve the technology and the tech stack itself, so writing code, or people things. So most things are people related, but sometimes there's a bit of code in there as well.
Okay, that's good. That's good. And, you have started your early stage engineer at WooThemes and grew as a senior director at Automattic. And many developers in our audience reach a point where their plugins grow, and suddenly they have to manage team instead of writing code. And the question is, looking back at your journey, what is the single hardest mindset shift required when moving from managing pure code to the managing a product, managing a people, and other kind of strategy?
Yeah, I found myself in that place a couple of times actually,
Yeah,
graduating from, being
coding.
the senior engineer and then into having to now manage other people and explain all the things that I've now been doing,
Yeah.
which is actually a good example of one of the things you'd have to do in that mindset shift. So people talk a lot about the difference between maker and manager at time, right? So in that role, when you're transitioning,
Mm,
you were a maker, right? So you're coding and building products, and now you have to be a manager as well.
mm,
So you kind of have to balance your time because you still need to write code in order to set an example and things like that. So finding the way to balance that time is always the tricky first step, right? How do I and then at some point they start blending, right? So how do I write code and use that code to maybe teach someone in the team a particular pattern or a particular security practice or things like that, right? So they do blend over time, but you do sometimes have those awkward conversations with yourself and with your team who you're now leading, right? Of now we used to work directly together only, now I'm also responsible for you, and that feels a bit different, right? So that's the one change that happens. I think over time, the framing I would give to that, especially for a founder or maker who then has to turn into a team lead as well, is the shift from doing things right, as in how does my code look and is it secure and all of that, to adding more of the doing the right thing, right? So as a business owner, are we building the right product? As a product person, are we building the right thing for our customer? Right? These are often things an engineer who's a pure engineer, so to speak, wouldn't be focused on because there are other people traditionally to do that kind of work. So that is a shift that does happen. So combining doing the thing right with doing the right thing.
yeah. It's sounds simple, but it's kind of massive
Yeah,
transition. Like people, a developer or engineer are only responsible for the writing a code or feature, adding a feature or debugging bugs, and but managing, leading a team and other things needs some kind of
yeah,
I think some kind of personal growth also, like they have to grow themselves as a uh, above that developer or developer kind of thing. Okay, and looking at the
exactly.
bigger picture, you recently speak at the checkout summit 2026 Sicily, where you s- share insight from reviewing 1,000 WooCommerce plugins and extensions, and from the architectural perspective, like when you look under the hood of those 1,000 plus extension, what is the most common red flag or a technical debt pattern that tells you the product will fail to scale under real world, like in the high volume e-commerce traffic? How do you find that kind of decision? How do you make?
Yeah, yeah. There's a few signals, and I think that the list is very long. So we'll look at a couple of the main ones. But if you look at the two pieces I would look at is the database itself. So how is the code interacting with your database?
Mm,
And a good example of that would be if there's a query or maybe a custom written query that isn't using WPDB or
mm,
things like that, you miss a lot of the benefits of the tooling inside of WordPress. Um, if there's no limit on a
mm,
query, right? Now we're getting
mhm,
a little bit more technical, but if we say, give me all the posts of this type, or give me all the products from the database, right? No
mm,
limit. So
mm,
you could say limit one or limit 100 or whatever that needs to be. But adding a limit is a signal to say, I've considered this decision. I only need the first 10, right?
mm,
Don't just give me all of them. And then what would happen if you were to say, give me all, is I would need to go and filter through that in PHP, right? So
mm,
I've run a very expensive database query now to get only when I only needed 10, right? So those are more considered decisions, right? In the same sort of vein, I think where the code runs is really important. So a good example would be only load your admin side code if you're actually in the admin, right?
mm, mm,
Only load your custom CSS for your admin page on that actual admin page. right? So
Mm.
it's this idea of signaling that you are conscious of where the code is running and that you've thought through what the execution of the code actually looks like.
Yeah.
Right? Those are key things there. Of course, we can talk a lot about actual code size as well. That's really important. But ultimately, we've heard a lot about WordPress plugins that too many plugins is bloating your system. It's slowing down your WordPress. These are somewhat misnomers, right? Poorly coded plugins that are in too many poorly coded plugins is going to slow you down simply.
Mm.
But if you have 100 plugins and they all load only when they need to, I
Mm.
think you're in a much better position than having 10 plugins that are really poorly built.
Yeah, yeah. That is that we can say that the speed matters. Like people need
Yeah.
a fast site, a fast execution, and any module should not crash their site. That kind of plugin really scale in the future. Okay, that makes a perfect sense, and it connects to your core summit philosophy. Like a great product solve one clear problem rather than trying to do everything. We can also connect that things to our that previous answer also. Yet
Yeah,
right now
exactly.
in 2026, founder are facing massive pressure and noise around AI feature. Like people just think an AI code and they will add to that plugin without any kind of resource and other things. How can a founder distinguish between the chasing shiny object like the current AI hype and the building long-term sustainable product value? How do you say no to that kind of noise?
Mm. Yeah, so I think it sort of goes back to also what I was talking about at Checkout Summit was, I think people might have heard one feature
Mm,
instead, like when I said a plugin should focus on one thing, so meeting one need, solving one problem.
yeah.
It doesn't mean only one feature, right? It means,
Yeah.
the product solves a specific problem, and
Mm,
the sort of guide and the guardrail that you put around your product is, you know, does this feature that I'm thinking about actually does it contribute to solving the problem or addressing the need that I'm trying to solve? And a good example, so I'm working on exploring an idea around a coaching product, right?
mm,
So the idea of being able to run coaching programs and things like that from within your WordPress. And an AI chatbot, as an example, a primitive example, wouldn't really make sense there, right? But
mm,
using AI to in my development helps a lot. There might be a logical point at which I say, we need some kind of insights and things like that. We could use a model to generate those insights, in a SaaS kind of a way. But shoving AI into a feature, into a product, as a feature, just for the sake of it, doesn't make sense. But if there's a way to do it in that it solves the need that your product promises to solve,
mm.
that's the main thing. But right now, I think if the product is not an AI something, whatever that is, then the biggest benefit to AI is actually on the back end of that and saying, how do we build this? Right.
Mm,
And you might build something and then an AI says, well, have you considered doing it this way?
mm,
Instead, and it's maybe even quicker.
mm,
Right. So that can help a lot with the scale as well. Of certain things are going back to your previous question about development and scalability. There are certain things we can do at a database level that
mm,
might not be very obvious to someone who is primarily focused on like a self-taught PHP developer, building
mm,
WordPress plugins, using WPDB, things like that. There are many things we can do at the database itself that,
mm,
let's say you needed to swap two values in two
mm,
different places. You can do that actually in one operation,
mm,
right? But if you do that on the PHP side, it's harder. Right.
mm,
So the AI can help with sort of closing those knowledge gaps as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It comes down to the focus, but keeping that focus often lead to the friction. Like you mentioned that the hardest problem in the software aren't the technical; it's they are human. And developer see the technical debt that needs fixing, while business partner just want a new feature that drives sales. And the question can be raised like that: how can engineering leaders better speak business value to their teams, to the tech, to that critical technical infrastructure of it aren't ignore for short term profit? Like
Yeah,
how can we better speak with our business leader about that?
yeah. And then how can business leaders understand the
Understand?
impact of
Yeah, yeah.
engineering at the same time, right? And I think one thing to keep in mind there as well is your business leader, if they're, let's say they're non-technical, right?
Mhm,
They need that engineering brain
mhm,
a lot more than we might realize. So to an engineer, writing code, solving these problems, it's easy, but we
mhm.
do it every day.
Yeah.
But to a business person, this is life-changing stuff,
Mm,
right? So we might see a little bit of a shift in that with AI now being everyone's superpower to
mm,
everything. Um, but at the same time, I think going up a level, right?
mm,
Instead of talking about just the sort of business and customer piece or the engineering or anything, if you go up one level and say, okay, but this is a business
mm,
and the business needs certain things in order to run,
mm,
right? That's a really powerful position to start from.
mm,
Let's say you're building something and it's hosted with AWS, let's say, and it's a living site, right?
mm,
There's a real cost attached to that, so business people can understand the finances and the cost of having it,
mm.
but they can also understand the impact of not having it, right? So if you say we have technical debt
Yeah.
and it's gone unaddressed, right? Your first instinct might be something like, well, we're a startup, so we have a million things to do, and we only can get to maybe two or three. Like we have runway for the next 3 months. What do we do? So
Mm,
you instinctively do the top three.
mm,
One of those top three will 100% not be the technical debt. Right? It'll
mm,
always be something like get customers, reduce costs, things like that. But at the same time, if the technical debt goes unaddressed, everything else suffers. Right? So that's a really good frame to put on it. It is also possible just to say, well, one thing I've done, successfully over the years is say, when an engineer would come to me with a specific request to work on something,
mm,
technical debt or otherwise, I would say, what can you get done in an hour? Right. A really good example of this in the WordPress space, not technical debt in the deeper sense, but switching from a traditional classic theme to a block theme or full site editing theme
mm,
is, without starting fresh, right,
mm,
is a very big job. But
mm,
if you start with a blank slate, it's easy because
mm,
there's no technical debt. You just start again. But trying to switch from one to the other is really hard. And we can all see. But sometimes, I had an engineer who really got the idea that we must do this. It's important for the future. And it is, but it's also a big job that needs to be prioritized or done slowly. So I said, well, what can you do in an hour? Take a look, no pressure, just put a timer on and see what happens. And he came back to me an hour later and said, wow, this is really hard. So the
yeah.
priority level of that went down really quickly.
Mm,
But we did take out some learnings from that as well and say, well, there are pieces of the site that are slow.
mm,
So what can we do to shift those into a more modern stack? And it really helped. So we were able to reduce page load as a result of that, but
mhm,
without doing the big thing, right? So
mm,
sometimes it's also about working within the business priorities and shaping the real ask, right? So the engineer might come with a big thing like we need to swap out this database layer for another database.
mhm,
You say, okay, well, what's the business value to it? And then
mhm,
they say, well, maybe if we just add some caching in between, we'll
mm.
be okay.
Yeah.
Right. So you can do the 5 minute or 10 minute solution
Mm,
rather than having to do the big thing of rolling the boulder up the hill for this massive solution with all
mm,
the unintended consequences along the way.
yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to, as an engineering person who's focusing specifically on engineering,
Mhm,
it is hard to shape and sort of understand and put your business hat on,
mm,
right, or your finance hat on, and say, well, what's the impact of this decision?
mm,
But it's not hard to convince someone to say, give me an hour, right, or
mm,
give me half an hour. Let me do a research spike and
mm,
understand the impact of this, right?
mm,
And then you can go to them with numbers and say, this looks like we actually have a small solution we can do. And
mm,
what you're looking for there, the nugget is actually low effort, high impact,
mm,
right? And there are solutions out there that have that. But
mm,
as engineers, we like to build and write code and change things and use the latest technologies and do all the big things,
mm,
right? But
mm,
sometimes, doing the big things has those unintended consequences. It's in our nature to want to do that.
mm,
At the same time, doing that and getting it out of our system for an hour and
mm,
then saying, okay, what's the 5 minute solution to this is
mm,
often more impactful and easier for a more traditional business person to digest.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of understanding. It's kind of alignment. Like it's all about the alignment about the developer,
Exactly.
development team, engineering team, and the product leader also. That would run any kind of business successfully. Like you have spent around 21 years leading high impact teams and shipping product used by millions of people. And as you look at the post summit landscape, the marketplace is shifting rapidly. Given your extensive experience, what is the truth about the current state of WooCommerce and WordPress ecosystem that you feel the broader community is still seriously underestimating right now? Like, do you see any kind of that kind of things?
I think so, yeah. So there's a few angles to this, but I think the two things, and one might seem a bit controversial, but factually accurate, is WordPress and WooCommerce today. Run if you install WordPress and WooCommerce,
Mm,
right, you get a store.
mm,
You get an online store. But now you need to do something and take a payment or manage that store, or maybe you have a very specialized warehousing system or things like that, right? You're going to need a plugin at some point.
mm,
So I think there's a tension, and I think something that's not stated like this, but I'm going to state it like this, and we see how it lands. Is that we've often said that WordPress and WooCommerce need plugins in order to run. But then what if we said WordPress and WooCommerce are the sort of baseline, the framework, the foundation, and plugins are actually the business that you're running, your
mm,
subscriptions, your membership site, your booking management, your things like that. These are the things that really make the business, right? So
mm,
we often talk about them as bolting on to WordPress and WooCommerce. What if we took the other way and said the plugins are actually required
mm,
and they happen to use WooCommerce and WordPress,
mm,
right? It's a different framing,
mm,
but it speaks to the other piece, which is the power of the community.
mm,
And I think we've often heard about how WordPress and WooCommerce as open source projects are fueled by the community, and they really and truly are. Like
mm,
if I look back in the day to a great example, before WooCommerce had a REST API,
mm,
the team at Skyverge actually built and contributed that entire project
mm,
straight into WooCommerce, right?
mm.
But that it also enabled them to build the first WooCommerce mobile apps and things like that,
Yeah.
right? So this was really community driven.
Mm,
And I think we need to go back to that. So Rodolfo put out a post a few weeks ago now about an open letter to WooCommerce,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was really powerful because that gets a lot of support.
Mm,
And the community is a really important piece of what makes these projects so magical, right?
mm,
So in the same vein of plugins are the thing that's where the like core business pieces actually are, right?
mm,
Who's building those plugins is not just WooCommerce, it's not just Automattic or other companies, it's actually members of the community as well, like individual developers or you know people who are building for fun. A lot of magic happens at kitchen tables, is essentially what I'm saying.
mm,
And I think the power of the community is something we can really, really hang our hats on and build on going forward.
yeah, yeah. That is an incredible perspective to close on. And thank you so much for sharing your people first leadership lesson with Goy Dolpe community today. Like before we wrap up, we can where can our listener go to read your thoughts and or connect to your coaching and CTO guidance? How can we find you? Find you?
Sure, and thanks for having me. Yeah, the best places to go would be either my website, which is mattcohen.co, or LinkedIn. Those are the best places. I'm getting a little more active on X, but yeah, my website and LinkedIn would be the best to go for now.
Yeah, okay, okay, fantastic. Thank you, thank you. We will link to the Matt's website and LinkedIn in our description below. And thank you all for tuning on. And make sure you hit the subscribe button. And we will see you in the next episode. Okay, bye. Bye for now.